Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here for our first Safe Streets event of the year. We are so thrilled to have our heavy-hitting speakers today, our Chief of Police, Chief Wheelis, and our Sheriff, Brian Hill. And we look forward to hearing a little bit about their thoughts on 2023 and their goals for 2024 for our city. I thank you all for being here. I ask if you would, if you have a smartphone, if you would scan the QR code at the top and sign in. We would so appreciate it. If you don't have a smartphone, no problem. Just let one of my staff or myself know, and we will help you get signed in. And then at the end of today's event, there is a survey. If you would just give us any and all feedback, that helps us to do a better job with these events going forward and making sure that we are addressing needs that are appropriate and important to our community. So please, if you would do those, I would really appreciate it. There's also some flyers on your table from the police department, their year-end report. You might see that on the screens behind us soon. Please help yourself to refreshments. The restrooms are actually just outside of the second room. If you need to use those, please help yourself. Feel free to come and go as you need. So I am not really of a lot of interest today, so I am going to turn it over to Chief Wheelis and have him come on up and get our morning started. And again, just thank you for being here and help me welcome him this morning, please.
Well, I'll take heavy hitter as a compliment. That's what that I will. We'll leave that there. I look small when the sheriff gets up here and he takes over the podium, but I'll try to hold up my end. I'm always following him as far as that goes. Good morning. It's great to see everybody this morning. We'd like to thank you for the invitation to start. It's always a great opportunity to speak in front of this group and all the great work that you guys do. I don't want to let that pass before I start into my talk, but it's appreciated, and keep up the good work. The community needs a lot of people just like you doing the work that you do. Let's give them a round of applause, actually. So, kind of when I was lining this out, when Mandy approached me about it, we started talking about some takeaways from 2023, and obviously you have the year-end crime stat report, and then more of a forward vision of 24 and how we're going to move forward as not only a law enforcement group and not only a partnership between the partnerships of the longstanding partnerships between the police department and the sheriff's department, but also more importantly by far, how we're going to move forward together as a community. And I think that's really what you'll hear me say a number of things. I'll give you the police perspective, but I understand that the police department is only as good as the community that supports it, because we need all of the support, and we'll talk about some good examples from 23. The numbers are only a small piece of the puzzle, and it's not lost on me as I turn the corner on almost 30 years of police service with one department in one community, which I'm very proud of here in the capital city. I never forget that the statistics, especially the homicide and the shooting statistics, represent families that lost loved ones in some case. And some of those families, in my experience and in Sheriff Hill's experience, because we were both homicide detectives for a number of years, never really recover from that loss. I mean, these stats, we can't forget, the stats are people. And it takes people like all of you all here in the room to help us solve the people that we lost in regards to this. So we'll talk numbers. I don't want it to get lost in the conversation that these numbers represent members of our community, many that lost their lives senselessly to violence, and that's a lot why those of us that wear the uniform chose this profession all these years ago to do that. So we did have some takeaways from 2023, well documented, well covered by the media, record number of homicides, increase in shootings. The takeaways that I had for 23, violent crime, more specifically than that, gun crime, more specifically than that, was something that we had not seen to this level, but youth crime. And that was both youths as offenders and youths as perpetrators. And we saw that in line with what you looked at nationally. You see a lot of that in the headlines across the country. And I think that concerns all of us. I think that concerns all of us, not just that wear badges and uniforms, but who have kids of our own, as parents, as just members of the community, that there's this uptick of violence on violence perpetuated by, see, I shouldn't have tried perpetuated, right? There's no way I was going to get through that word, right? I'll do some of that, but it's because I'm passionate about what I do. Even 30 years into this, there's a peace that comes with knowing you're exactly where you're at and exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And I feel that every day. I see behind the scenes. These were record numbers not in a positive way for the police department, but I got to see behind the scenes and the response to that. And every time there's a challenge in your life, there's an opportunity for you to excel. And I can tell you the men and women of the police department and the sheriff's office and all of our partners, we're working really, really hard behind the scenes. And we do have, a high 86% clearance rate of the homicides, 30 of 35. And the police department for several years has been in the 80, 90% of those rates. Now, I wish there was none, and I wish we were 0 for 0 in regards to that. But certainly we have had a number of instances in 23 and over the course of my career where we have gotten a lot of justice for families, some degree of closure in regards to that. But like I said, we had the third year of downturn in overall crime. Overall crime is property crime and violent crime together. We were still down in property crime numbers. Property crime numbers are a lot more substantial from a statistical number standpoint than violent crime. Not necessarily impactful to the community as much, but from a statistical purpose, we were our third year in a row of a downturn in overall crime, which is a bright spot to take from that. But more shadowed from that was obviously the violent crime and the gun violence. And so where we went from there, I just want to share a couple things from the year, and then I'll move on to what I see as 24's vision. But I think this community and this leadership group that's gathered here today needs to hear a clear message from the chief of police. There were several instances in 23 where I asked for help, and I'll put the mayor on the spot since he's here. I asked for help from city leaders, the mayor being one of them, to put a call out to the community to get information on unsolved homicides that we were working as the chief of police on social media, the mayor, and several members of the governing body put together a collaborative message where we asked the community for information on unsolved homicides. We got that information. This community answered. I did a media piece just the other day where I talked about 2023 numbers were not where we wanted them to be, but the response that this community sent a clear message to in regards to accountability and that they were not okay with a certain level of violence was a bright spot for me as the chief of police behind the scenes. The business leaders and the church leaders and a lot of civic service organization leaders that reached out to me over the course of that year and met with me and said, Chief, what can we do to help the police department? What can we do to help the sheriff's office? What can we do to help the community and the youth in our community when we went through some of these spots? Those kind of responses, I don't think get enough coverage. Sometimes when you're in leadership roles, you're the only ones that see them. But there were several times throughout the very trying year of 2023 where I asked for help from various parts of the community, and I got it every single time. I never had anybody say to me, that's not my problem, I'm not interested in helping. And so I understand the statistical picture. But beyond that, I will tell you that people make a difference. This community is a great community. It's going to rebound from the year that we had in 23. And I believe 2024 will be a great year where we look back and said, these are the lessons that we learned. Here's what we're going to do moving forward. And we're going to move forward together in that vein. And so I wanted to share a message of positivity this morning. I heard a great thing. You're either a fountain where you fill people up or you're a drain where you suck people dry. And if we could all try to be a little bit more of a fountain for those of us who have a public persona and get the opportunity to speak to groups such as this one, I think we all got to set that message out, right? 23 had some challenges. 24 is absolutely, the one thing you can guarantee is going to have some challenges. But I'm excited as the chief of police for the capital city here in Topeka, Kansas, to be a part of the solution and to take the lessons and the challenges of 23 and move us forward into 24 from what we've learned. So let's talk a little bit about that. That's the chief standing in front of you saying, 24 is going to be things where we do things different. There was a lot of conversations between a lot of different groups, existing partnerships that the police department and the sheriff's office have had for a very long time in the community that were reinvigorated by the challenges of 23. There were also new conversations, and you've seen some media coverage of different groups that are also forming outside of their own and doing their own data research. We're helping them with that, and taking a different look from a community grassroots programs. And I think you're going to see a lot of that, and I'm excited about a lot of that. Some of those programs will work out, some of them won't, but the conversations and the partnerships and the collaborations that even come from the failed ones will bear fruit in the future. And right on cue, I see Mr. Martin walking in from the back. Hey, great to see you. Great piece on the Salute Our Heroes. I appreciate the work that you're doing in the community. And you came in right at the time where I was talking about future partnerships and future innovations and collaborations. So almost like we planned it, right? If I had my phone, you guys would think I was texting him, come on in, right? As far as that goes. But no, there's a lot of great things that are coming forward. And I like a lot of the conversations and where they're going. And like I said, the point I just made, even from some of those partnerships that don't result in immediate success, the conversations form a foundation for future efforts. Certainly we have had a number of partnerships that have lasted for a very long time. The city has taken a more proactive stance in providing gun locks. I will tell you that we saw in 23, one of the big things is that we are really talking about and putting a new emphasis on, because the police department's always talked about it. Safe gun ownership, responsible gun handling, making sure that you have proper locking mechanisms if you choose to have a firearm in your home to keep it out of the hands of children, to avert tragedies. There are a number of differences now in the laws as far as holding people accountable and responsible for firearms in homes than there have been in the past. And those specific kinds of cases are very, very hard on a community. They're hard on a neighborhood, they're hard on a family, because they are totally preventable, and those ones are the ones that linger. I mean, they usually involve youth, which is another point of emphasis. But so please, if I can give you a second message, gun ownership, be responsible. And the city has taken a stance, just did another one at a community center, free gun lock giveaways. I know there's a number of groups in town that do that as well, and trying to get that message out there, because we saw an uptick of that in 2023 as well. So that is what I will tell you, just to kind of recap. Violent crime, gun crime, and specifically the uptick we saw in youth crime, both as offenders and perpetrators in 23, has led us to the conclusion that the focus in 2024 is the expansion of partnerships that we have that are existing, and as much time, energy, resources as we can possibly pour into mentorship programs, both existing ones and creation of new ones, to try to give the youth in this community and really all across this country as much advantage as we can in the challenging world and landscape that they live in. They are growing up in a different time. There are lots of challenges. Technology is amazing, except when it's not, right? And so we all deal with that. I was at a recent thing, and it actually happened to be across the way at a different conference room. And we had a portion of the panel discussions, and Danielle was there with me. Daniel was there. They both were there, actually. So we had a discussion where there was an entire part of it that was youth. And they gave us a perspective on what they saw as the challenges and what they wanted from their city leadership groups. And I can tell you, I had discussions with people after that. Some of the most impactful things that were said, and it was a pretty good list of leaders in the community, but one of the most impactful things that was said by a 13-year-old student that was on one of the panels. And I wrote it down, and I've used it. I told her before I left that day, I met with her and I told her I was going to use it in a lot of the public speaking things that I did. And the simple message that she had as advice for everybody, including adult leaders in this community, was practice humanity. and I'll just let that sink into you. I mean, we're all working hard. We're all trying to make the differences in the places that we can make a difference. There is no quit in the law enforcement segment of this community. There is no quit in the public service sector of this community. There is no quit in the community service organizations, in the church organizations, in the business community. I do not see that when I am out in the community, that people are quitting. 23, we've turned to page 24, we are into. We will not forget the lessons of 23. We will have better answers in 24. But I do not see quit in the capital city, and that's what makes me proud to be the chief of the police department. I don't think I can end it much better than that, so I think I'll probably just leave it right there.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me. I always love following Chief Wheelis. Really not. He's such a good speaker, isn't he? I've worked with Chief Wheelis for a lot of years, and when I came over to be sheriff of the sheriff's office, I took my job very seriously. I wanted to do something to assist with impacting crime. Our crime out in the county, honestly, our stats have continued to trend downward. For the last 5 years, there's been significant downtrend. This last year, we more flattened out. We didn't have an uptick, but we stayed the same. And in the world of law enforcement, you're always looking down the road. How can we do better? What's going on? From where I sit, looking at all the national trends and everything that's coming, most of the violent crime that I see spurs around narcotics, drug ripoffs, drug abuse. I think you can link that back to about every violent crime. Even a lot of the robberies are drug addicts. I look at the narcotics that are rolling across the country. We're fortunate here in the Midwest. Honestly, I think we got better people here. We got good people here in the Midwest. Communities, they still care about each other. They still try to help, talk, communicate. Some of the drugs that are rolling out in our nation today is pretty scary. I saw a load of this tranq drug was knocked off on the highway passing through here. So it's coming through here. It's a matter of time it'll be here. And the scary part of that, those drugs are that they'll mix them with the fentanyl, and now the Narcan's not working. So very dangerous situation with what's coming into this country. They're flooding this country. It used to be a time, I was a narcotics officer here years ago. You'd make a big narcotics arrest, seizure, kind of dry it up in the city for quite a while. We don't see those dry spots anymore. They're flooding this nation. So I am a big believer in community outreach, especially to our children. I have family members in educational fields, and, wouldn't be a drug problem if we wasn't using drugs, I guess. So impacting kids to make better decisions, all of us to make better decisions when it comes to those type of things. So sitting here looking at what could we do as a sheriff's office to make this community safer. One is the collaboration with the Topeka Police Department. I've been a cop here for over 30 years. We've never had better collaboration between the sheriff's office and the city of Topeka. The technology that's out there, it's everywhere. How can we better benefit that to keep us all safe? We've been able to acquire a grant, and we've put tag readers on our deputies' cars. As they drive around, used to be when Chief Wheelis and I was out in the street, we had a list of 100 and something cars that I'd try to remember, and I'd remember the top two probably, of stolen cars. And so a lot of stuff went unnoticed. These tag readers was like riding around with Super Cop in that car, because that tag reader, stolen car. So now deputies can pay attention to the road, the environment, what's going on, keep their focus on policing issues, and then when that thing goes off, oh, stolen car. Okay, so we're actually finding and seizing a lot of stolen property based upon that. I think it's very beneficial for law enforcement to have that technology. There's also a safety aspect in that, because a lot of these alerts that go out across the country, they're violent crimes, homicide offenders, absconding, and sometimes they'll have vehicle or tag information. So if that goes off, it allows our deputies to call for a back before we ever even hit the lights on that car. And those seconds matter in critical incidences. So the technology that we're trying to acquire, I think will impact this community, help us all better be safe. I spent a lot of time as a sheriff trying to communicate and do trainings, met with a lot of superintendents and principals of the school after all the school instances. We saw something that I had never seen, nobody had seen in our country when that elementary school was shot up. And I just thought, wow, where are we at in our world today? So again, law enforcement, what can we do? So we have spent a lot of time, effort, and money coming up with our crime center that is addition to our dispatch center. We've communicated with the schools and allowed them to bring cameras online. And we're working diligently, and there's a lot of schools that are doing that, working with us. So if you have a call from a school of an active shooter, immediately those cameras come up online, and we can have personnel at the police department, sheriff's office, looking at that, telling us real time where they at, who they are, what they're armed with, even sending screenshot pictures out to our guys going to that call, so they know exactly. They'll see it on their screen. That's who I'm looking for. That's a huge tool. I hope we never have to use it. You know, in law enforcement, a lot of times you prepare for war and hope you never have to, and you put these tools together. I hope that's something we never have to utilize, but we would be naive not to try to do something to protect our children. So we're putting a lot of effort into that. I know Chief Wheelis has collaborated with us on that crime center, and after working city and county, I think that's probably going to be one of the most impactful things to help fight crime here in Shawnee County that I've seen in my 30 years. So pretty excited about trying to get that online and keep us safe. I think we have some challenges, but like Chief Wheelis said, there is a lot of good people here working together trying to make this community better. I think it's achievable for us. And as we move forward, I have hopes to keep the county crime stats declining, and honestly, overall, all the crime stats in this community. And so we're going to keep collaborating, and through education, through enforcement, and the community all coming together, I think it's an achievable goal for us. So I don't have a great way to end my speeches like Chief Wheelis. I usually stand here and answer questions, but thank you for having me come up. Is there anything anybody would like to ask a question to here? I'd be happy to answer it for you. Wow, you guys are easy. Okay. Yes, sir.
How can we help you guys? I mean, what is it that you need, both in the city and the county? I remember going to Bonaparte saying one time to a group of folks in Topeka, how many of you live in the county? And no one raised their hand and said, you all live in the county. I mean, we all have a
Right.
responsibility for this county as a
Right.
whole. And so, in that vein, how can we help you and Chief Wheelis, other than the community event you're talking about? What do you need now in order to better do your job?
We need a neighborhood watch through this whole county. I need eyes and ears, paying attention to what's going on in the community, picking the phone up, calling, sending us texts, sending us emails. I'm pretty bad about it. Even people hit me up on Facebook in the middle of the night, and I'm answering messages back and what's going on. So, yes.
Camera sign up too.
What's that?
Camera sign up for the real-time crime center.
Yes, yes. We do have a camera sign up that we're going to be pushing out for the Real-Time Crime Center. So you could sign your home up, If there's an event, we'll be able to know to come contact you to see if you got actual video of that. You know, the camera system has assisted a lot in the crime solving now, because we didn't have that. We had to go out and talk to people, knock on all the doors, and now we get video, which assists, and I think that helps with the solvability.
We talk about it all the time, that when we were homicide detectives, not everybody had Ring doorbells and things like that. I mean, really, you can, and we've had a lot of examples of this, it's not a secret, that, I mean, you can really track movement sometimes of people throughout a neighborhood where generally there weren't cameras before. So embracing technology wherever you can is, and obviously you have to develop policies and parameters, but embracing technology first and then working through. As far as your question though, I would tell you this, and maybe it's a little bit naive, but it's kind, we think about things like technology and the real-time crime center, all those things all the time. I'll tell you this, and this will probably resonate with you too, but let your public safety officers, when you have contact with them, know you appreciate it. Let them know, and I say public safety team, not just law enforcement, but fire, AMR, ambulance personnel. There's a real cost that goes with doing these jobs. And I think, you know, it's time away from your family, it's seeing traumatic events and figuring out a way to process those and deal with those on a very routine basis. So I would tell you too, we appreciate community support. It does matter. It matters to the working officers. It matters to the leadership of the departments. And it's one of the things like Chief Phillips of the fire department I talk about all the time. So it's a simple thing. We get great support in the community. Please don't take this to being that we don't, because we do. But you can never, it's a tough job in a challenging world, and it will continue to be so. So support from the community. And I do a lot of things in-house with the department, and I know the sheriff does too, where I let them know. I let the troops know. When I'm out in the community and I'm at an event and I get positive feedback. When the city council says good things about them at the meeting, I make sure that they see that. When different groups say that thing. So for me, that positive message, again, I guess I'm feeling real positive this morning, you know. The fountain and the drain, right? So let's just try to be fountains for each other and try to keep us all on track about what the mission is. Because there's not one person in this room who doesn't want the next generation to have better, right? And there's not one person in this room, with all the public service that I see sitting around this room, that isn't willing to do the work if we can make the world a better place. And I liked what the sheriff said. It's achievable here in this community. It is. It flat is. But it's up to us, right? It doesn't happen on its own. We got to move it. We got to do the work. And I look around and I see it. I get reinvigorated by these kind of things, that, especially first thing in the morning. I like it. I like it. So.
If I could have one comment with regard to that, Chief. I spent 38 years in law enforcement in Shawnee County. I've never seen a better working relationship between the sheriff's office and the Topeka Police Department than I see right now.
Thank you.
It's really,
Just to add one thing Chief said, that kind of outreach to our officers helps us recruit. It helps us. We're still able to hire people to come here and be cops. There's places that guys go, oh, I don't know that I'd want to work there. Listen, if you're not liked, appreciated where you work, do you want to work there? I mean, we all have to because we got bills, right? But it's not the first choice. So it really does help us recruit here and hire. We are down a couple of numbers through retirements. Our issues in law enforcement is I can't hire somebody on Monday and they're working on Tuesday. When I hire them, we have a year. It'll take us a year to get that guy, that gal trained out on the street, ready to go. And so we're trying to stay ahead of that, and that community outreach and appreciation definitely helps us recruit and maintain our officers. So thank you for that too.
And let them know how great your career was for 38 years. And I know you do. I know you're a spokesperson out there, but this is a great job. And when people leave this line of work, they miss it because of you can make a difference, right? And one of the biggest things for the next generation that I hear every time I'm either dealing with them or even through the schools, they want to be valued and validated, and they want a profession that makes a difference. They're not just here for a check. They want to make a difference in that organization or in whatever business that they're in. So I think this is one of those great jobs where you can do that. And I'm gonna embarrass the sheriff just here for just a minute too, because he talked a little bit about the Real Crime Center, which I was laughing because he never mentioned the fact of how much work he's done. He's the reason why there's a real-time crime center starting here in Shawnee County and in the city of Topeka. He gives a lot of credit out, but he is singularly focused, since I've known him for as many years as I have, on law enforcement making it safer. That is what he gets up in the morning thinking about. That's what he goes into the bed thinking. To hear him say he answers Facebook messages about reporting crime in the middle of the night is not a surprise to me. So understand, when he's excited about the Real-Time Crime Center, I'm excited about it. It's going to be something that's long-term really good for this community. But it happened because the citizens of Shawnee County were smart enough to elect a great sheriff. And I think that we need to give him a round of applause.
Thank you. I got to buy you lunch now.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're going somewhere that's got a better menu. Go ahead. Well, yeah, we certainly can talk to you about the physical jurisdictions, but we also can tell you this, and the sheriff will tell you this. One of the very first things he did when he was the sheriff, and I can't remember, you were the acting sheriff first? Or no, you were just elected, right?
Yeah, well, I was
my
elected
interim,
in
right?
a special election for a couple of years.
Anyway, we'll get. It was funny that you did this, Danielle, because that's kind of what it's like when he and I start talking. But anyway, very early on in either my interim and his special election thing, one of the first things he did was come over and talk to me, and he and I immediately came to an agreement where he had granted jurisdiction for city officers into the county. And obviously, county officers already have jurisdiction in the city because the city's in the county. We made that collaboration formalized in a jurisdictional sense in the very, very beginning. So we can absolutely tell you where the county and city jurisdictions are, but from an enforcement and from a response standpoint, we have lots of examples where if a deputy is closer to the call in the city, they go. They don't have to. It used to be you had to kind of get permission, and it was a very wonky type thing, very bureaucratic, which fortunately neither one of us are that much about that. So that is the first thing I would like to emphasize is actually from a response standpoint, there were times where we were burning valuable minutes of response time trying to figure out whose law enforcement agency in the past we're going through. And that was one of the first things we saw as street operators that we had the opportunity when we became leaders to change. And it was one of the first things we did change. If a deputy's closer, they go. If the PD officer's on the edge of the city and a deputy needs it back, they go. They don't have to ask for permission. They don't have to worry about the jurisdiction. It's kind of a multi-agency agreement. As far as if the physical boundaries, I mean, the city limits essentially are, right off the top of my head, I'm going like, it's
yeah, they keep changing.
west, Wanamaker-ish, yours, and then there's different neighborhoods that are annexed. It's not, unfortunately, it's not like a straight line. It's kind of a jagged thing, but like I said, it's less impactful than you might think it is because city and county, we work together. Because it's more effective for us to work together. Our investigative bureaus, because the simple matter of it, and we've known this for years, is criminals don't care whose jurisdiction it is, right? And so we shouldn't either, right? His narcotics unit works with my narcotics unit. His burglary unit works with my burglary unit. His auto theft, because it's not, oh, I'm only doing these things in the city, or I'm only doing these things in the county. And so that is not how he views it. That is not how we view it. So, and that is one of the things that you hear from people who've been around the scene for a long time. It wasn't always like that as far as the county sheriff thinking that the city's problems were the city's problems. It hasn't been like that with Sheriff Hill and I since day one as far as jurisdictional responses.
Well, I got family that live here too, and they're not going to say, no, I want a deputy to save me. They just want somebody to respond. So we signed that agreement, that proximity dispatching, put it in place in dispatch, and they dispatch closest car. Because now they got GPSs on the cars. We know where everybody's at. That dispatcher knows who's closest to that volatile situation, and they'll dispatch closest deputy or officer there.
Now, and who may take the report once we get the scene secured and stuff, that still is based on jurisdictional things, but the initial response was what he and I were talking about, and that's an excellent point. Both agencies' cars and all the apparatus we have GPS on them, so the dispatcher can tell when they're dispatching the call who's closer. And we just don't use any of that time burning it from the time the dispatcher sees the call, knows who the closest units are, messing around asking for a supervisor's permission to who's going to go and do the job, because the job's the same in the city and the county. It's to provide protection and service to the citizens. We don't see those lines the same as maybe it's been in the past.
Ms. Daniel Martin, and I really appreciate your service, and I really appreciate, what we're trying to do, but in all actuality, we need work, and we need to work together on some things. One of the things that's been appalling to me is that last year we set the record with 35 murders. We're like, that's appalling. But everybody that it affected in the poverty areas, they were like, man, we're going to get 36 this year. Because that's the mentality. And so out of the 35 homicides that happened in 2023, 18 of them were African Americans. Out of the 35 people that committed the murders, 22 were African Americans. Now, we're talking about safe, right? It's safe to say that just about everybody in this room is safe from murder, except for the 4 black people that's up in here, because this is really by proximity. And so I have a formula, and the formula says needs times deprivation equals the criminal mentality. Poverty, like we'll fight crime, but who's helping us fight poverty? Because poverty is what creates the criminal mentality sometimes. Now, you got other people that can rise above the poverty and then go on to make great things for each other, for themselves, but the majority gets caught up in the fast money. And like the sheriff said, drugs are being flooded into the United States. We're the United States is the number one consumer of drugs. America's, we're going to demand our drugs. You know what I mean? When we wake up in the morning, we need drugs. And so it's an uphill battle being the police and the sheriff fighting this, because as soon as one get caught, here comes 5 more looking for that opportunity. And then they're fighting over the resources that this guy just left. So how do we fight that? Well, there is 3 tiers. One, we have to be proactive in the schools. We have to get these kids and talk to them and bring people that look like them and talk like them, and that's from their same environment. If we don't do that, then what's going to happen is that they're not going to be able to connect with the people that's actually trying to help them and us. So another thing is this: the people that are getting the money for all these grants, they can't help the people that homicides adequately, they can't, that the homicides are really affecting. They can't address them because they can't reach them, and they can't connect to them. And so it's hard. And so another thing is that, we in Topeka have to start working together. And when I say working together, I mean having everybody have a seat at the table and being able to produce working, functioning, evidence-based practices that work for the police, the people in the community, and the children. Because at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer in what the sheriff said. He said, nobody wants their kids to not be in a better situation that they are in. And so I'm just like, hey, we have to do more, and we have to be more inclusive at the table. And I believe that the sheriff and the chief is the people that's going to make that happen, where we can bridge that gap in that connection. And if they don't, then we'll have 40 murders this year. So I just wanted to make a statement.
I always appreciate your comments, Daniel, and your perspective. I appreciate that. But beyond your words, I appreciate the action that you're doing in this community. I think that needs to be acknowledged in this room. So I agree with you. I mean, you have a unique perspective based on experience. And I think I value it. So I think that's the thing. I appreciate your support in regards to what we want to do. And I think you're right. There's a time for talk, and there's a time for action, and those are the things that's where we're at. We'll see where we go. If we knew how everything was going to work out, we'd never make any mistakes, right? So, but I appreciate your comments.
Concerning the tag readers on the units, both sheriff and the PD, are those wrote into your budget, or is that obtained through grants?
A little bit of both on our side.
A little bit of both? Okay. How do you decide in what area of town those cars are going to be in? Is it judged by statistics of where they're seeing stolen cars more at?
Well, typically, all police have assigned areas that they patrol. So in the county and the city both, there's assigned areas. And I know over the years, they've even changed some of the assignments based upon call load and stuff in the city. I can let Chief Wheelis.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note, one of the platforms is cars for LPRs, but there's also stationary LPRs at multiple intersections throughout this community, and we're increasing the number of intersections that are covered. That very much is, as Daniel alluded to, evidence-based thing. I mean, a lot of what we do, resource allocation, whether it's money, manpower, anything else, is based on crime statistics. What we see every 2 weeks, we meet with my staff, and we look at the crime numbers from the prior period of time, and that's where we make resource decisions. You chip away at a crime problem all year long, and hopefully at the end of the year, you're in a good place. But the LPRs are also stationary at various intersections. Those locations are very much decided on a combination of motor vehicle accident, crime data, and kind of a lot of it, an algorithm as far as where they are. But we have been on this course for several years. Started in 18-ish, as far as, because when you get to a real-time crime center, you have to get there, you have to have an infrastructure of surveillance cameras, LPRs, that feeds data into your center, and most of the time, certainly our case here, you have to build that on multiple years. That's not a one-time, you got enough money where you can do it all at 1 year. So we have looked at a strategic plan of camera placement, stationary. The mobile ones are a little bit more fluctuating because no matter what territory you're assigned to, you get pulled out of your call load, can put you anywhere. That's why the stationary ones are kind of a little bit more of an effective tool for us gathering at major intersections. But we are moving in a direction we have more and more and more coverage. Where it is right now, we primarily have most of the cameras are towards the east side location and the north location. We're going to be putting some more out west with those things to come. So it's a building thing of many years. It's all culminating in the fact of this real-time crime center, because you got to have the data and the surveillance footage to give you real-time information to be able to relay it. So that was kind of a long thing, but hopefully, I mean, it's kind of complicated. There's cars, there's stationary ones. It's all built to give information to the real-time crime center, so when we have big events happen, there can be a person who's watching the camera and relaying that to the officers on the street by the radio in real time. And we can't emphasize how important that is, because for most of our careers, we went to calls for service not knowing very much information about what we were going to, because there wasn't the level of surveillance cameras, there wasn't LPRs and all the things that we did. You didn't really know. And so this is really trying to bridge that gap between what the officers' information they have as they're responding, as opposed to when they get there.
It's a great tool.
Yeah.
It's a great tool.
Yeah. It can be, but it's still people and their responses to it. But it's about giving our people the best equipment. What keeps he and I up at night is, are we doing enough to get our people the best equipment and put them in the best position they can be to respond to some of the incredibly chaotic and challenging things that they have to respond to. And that's a priority for him and I, because we were those people in those situations. And it's real when you're at night and you're going through a door and you're not sure how it's all going to work out. It can be very real. So
I just want to thank you for being there
we
for us.
appreciate that. We appreciate that. Oh, whoever she chooses with the microphone, she's got the power.
I want to get back to what Sheriff Hill suggested. I'm going to top you at the kitty here.
You usually do.
On the years of service. I had 45 years in law enforcement.
Let's give him a round of applause. 40.
But one of the most effective things that I saw during that time was the community effort brought forth through the Safe Streets program and the Neighborhood Watch. And when you mentioned that a countywide Neighborhood Watch program, I can remember it making a real difference for each little pocket of community when they saw activity that they knew wasn't usual in their neighborhood, and they wanted real-time response. I've always said there are more of us now than there are of law enforcement, so you have to take advantage of their proximity to the opportunity for crimes and their willingness, and that's the big piece, their willingness to relay that information to law enforcement. So if there's any way that that can be revitalized, I think it would be a great thing that anybody can do. People ask all the time, what can I do to help law enforcement? That's a very easy, simple thing to do. It takes a lot of work and organization to keep it together. I know that. But that is something that everyone can do. No special training really, no time limits involved. Something you see late at night, you know it's wrong. Don't Facebook Sheriff Hill, put it out on Neighborhood Watch, and you'll get a more immediate reaction. And so I think that's great that you mentioned it. And I just want to compliment both of you quickly, because it's long been my effort to bring city and county together, governing bodies working together, and erase that line of it's a city problem or a county problem. You two are a good example for what can happen if, in fact, you do that. So I applaud you for your efforts to be so collaborative, and I hold you up as examples, and I hope that myself, my governing body, and the county's governing body will see that opportunity and take it to the next level. So thank you both very much.
I'm just going to speak real quick to what Mayor Padilla said about Neighborhood Watch. And we have been meeting with Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala on how we can reimagine Neighborhood Watch. And the next step is to bring community people to the table and all of us sit down and then talk about how this can be reimagined. So it's not lost out there. And we are actively at PARS working on how we can better suit the community with it. So that I just wanted to add that.
So we have the data that comes from TB. I know where to find it from the police department, but I guess I've never went to look for data from the sheriff's department. Is that accessible online? Where can we find that kind of information from the county side?
Yes, it should be accessible, and I'm going to have to ask somebody who actually knows how to give that. I do have a sheet here of some crime stats, though, that I can provide here today so that everyone can see. We have a lieutenant right here, Lieutenant Wanamaker, who takes care of a lot of that for us.
I don't think the final stats are done as of right now. When they are accessible, I'm new to the position I'm in. I'm not sure how those are posted. But if you give me your information at the end of this, I can reach out to you once I get back to the office
think there's an amazing opportunity for Danielle, who is very, very stat driven. I'll just let you know that right now, that she would probably have some amazing advice on how to do that stuff. So she's a good resource for you too, LT. Let me tell you.
Back in the 1970s and 80s, we had a neighborhood watch in Highcrest.
Yes, ma'am.
We had 0 crime, period, during that time. And then everybody said, well, we don't have any crime, so we don't need to keep the watch.
See, that's why everybody wants ability and access to a time machine.
But we had a base radio and CB radios in the cars, and we always had 2 cars out every night. Everybody was willing to do it. And it was just amazing how crime went to zilch.
Right.
It does work, but you have to work at it and find people that are willing to do the legwork and the driving and the watching and all of that.
Absolutely.
We've been fortunate to have a lot of citizens come out. We've started our citizens posse, our search and rescue posse. So we have folks that'll come out in their own, out in the county with their side-by-sides or their vehicles and drive when we have missing individuals, runaways. Sometimes we have elderly people walk away. And we're very fortunate that here in this community, people are still willing to get involved.
Yeah, we have cameras, and we're on an intersection. If we would have had those cameras back when the little girl was shot out in front of our house, we would have had pictures of the car and maybe the shooters. So they're valuable.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know that any law enforcement head of any agency anywhere is going to argue against more cameras. There may be other groups that argue against more cameras, but it's not going to be the law enforcement. It's such a big tool for what we do now. And Sheriff Hill and I, as you both know, we're both homicide and detectives at the PD for a lot of years together. And I think he will back me up on this. People used to ask us all the time, what's the difference between the cases you solve and the cases you don't solve? And for us, we do the same steps, the same way, the same things. It's oftentimes that one person that comes forward and gives you the piece of information, whether it's direct or indirect, that makes all the difference in the world between being solved or not solved, all the time for our whole careers. So I think you're right. There is no way to overemphasize citizen participation in making law enforcement effective. It has to be. It will not be without citizen participation.
Any last questions? Well, I first want to thank both of you for being here. You really are a good little tag team. You can see the camaraderie and the respect between each other, and that is a real model for all of us. And I really commend Mayor Padilla's thought about this needs to be what we see across all of our city and county because we all have the same interest overall, I would say. I also would just add that we recently, Haley and I went out to a neighborhood watch at Deer Creek Apartments, and it was so special. It was at 3:30 in the afternoon, and I was just like, how's this gonna go? We were in this tiny little room. We had our little PowerPoint up on the screen, and it was standing room only, and it was wonderful. We had retired folks, we had mothers, we had gentlemen who worked the overnight shift, we had just a very diverse group of individuals. And all of them were just fully committed to what they could do to make their area better. And watching that and watching a woman talk about how she was frightened one night taking out her dog, and watching one of the young men say, here's my number, you take it with you. It just was like, wow, this is what it's all about, is just getting people together and getting to know one another and say, you know, we're looking out for each other. we can make this place better by our own commitments. So we're in this with you however we can be as an agency and our Safe Streets program to support you. And thank you, all of you, for being here and the great questions. Can we go ahead and just give these gentlemen another round of applause? And as you know, I am a first responder's wife, and I do wear my red because of Valentine's Day, not because of any beliefs there, but I just want to say I thank you all because you guys are the folks that clear the scenes before my guy can go in. And I know how difficult that job can be. I see the toll it takes on individuals, and I just commend you because I'm not someone that could go kick in that door in the middle of the night with somebody calling on the other side. So I thank you and the men and women that you lead for all of the work that they do because it does make a difference and is very appreciated. So thank you. Finally, just if you would just take a minute and scan the QR code that's up on the screen or it's on the bottom of your paper in front of you, the survey. We appreciate all feedback. It really drives the work that we do. And we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. And thank you so much for coming out. And have a great day. We try to end right on time, and we're right there. So have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you next time.